Robert Plank Show, Episode 32, The Decline of Social Proof, Why You Should Value Money More Than Blog Comments. Welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. Today's episode is sponsored by MembershipCube.com, where you can go from nothing to having your entire membership site set up in the very first session as soon as you join Membership Cube. And once you get that site set up, you can then move on to our other modules of installing our Drip plugin, getting our address collector plugin and directory plugin going, and building up a site in small baby steps so that you can learn as you earn and grow your business faster than you ever thought possible. So today, we're going to talk about a couple of things. And I mean, the first thought of today is that you can set your own rules. And by the way, I'm going to be going to the gym later, so we don't have a lot of time to talk about stuff. So I'll compress a lot in what time we have. So you can set your own rules. And you know what attracted me in the beginning to a lot of this internet marketing stuff was I would follow a couple of bloggers, some of these guys who would post literally every single day. And I found myself, I was, 19, 20 years old, and I got so angry that I wasn't able to just buy a house outright. I couldn't just go to someone with cash and just say, all right, home in California, 300 grand, boom, wiped out. I remember being that young, just kind of angry that I'd have to get a mortgage and that, I couldn't own a $100,000 car. And you know what? Not to burst your bubble here, but a lot of those things like launch videos and stuff like that where they show you their giant house, giant car, they're keeping up appearances, but they're freaking broke. And you fast forward several years later to some of these guys I followed, and I was in fact jealous of their giant house and all their multiple cars. And then I find out that, they've quit internet marketing. They're back at the day job. And so, you don't have to compare yourself to anyone else. And the cool thing about this whole making money online, building your own business kind of thing is that you can set your own rules. You can be your own person. I mean, I'm thinking about, some of these guys, like if you've ever heard of a fellow, Dan Kennedy. This guy, he charges money, large amount of money for someone to come to his house for one day, and they, strategize things into the business, and even has, things like coaching programs where you can't actually talk to him. You have to meet up on these conference calls. Or if you do want to talk to him, then you have to send in a fax message to this one phone number between a certain number of hours and wait X number of time to get a response. And so, you look at that and you might say, man, that Dan Kennedy guy's a jerk. Well, yeah, except for he makes more money than you, and yeah, maybe he's a jerk, but you don't have to buy from him, and maybe he's a jerk, but if that wasn't working for him, if the marketplace decided that those rules weren't working and that he wasn't making any sales with that coaching program, wouldn't it make sense that he would stop doing it? And if you see people and maybe you get angry and say, man, they really charge $2,000 for that coaching program or $5,000 for that event or $300 for that WordPress theme. Well, you know what? You don't have to buy it. And if they are making sales over and over and have to stay in business, maybe they're onto something there. And so, this all kind of came to a head, and this is all reminded me of this recently because not that long ago I was taking a road trip. Have you ever taken a road trip just you, no one else? It's kind of interesting, kind of nice. And so I went and checked out the Grand Canyon, the Petrified Forest, all these different areas. And for some reason, when I'm outside of California and I'm in the desert and there's no towns around for 100 miles at least, I turn on the radio. Usually this guy Dave Ramsey comes on. I heard of this guy Dave Ramsey. I'm not endorsing him or anything like that, but he has this call-in show. He has this podcast, and every time I'm out and about out of California, I hear this guy on the radio, and he has a show where people call in every day, and every time it's like the same 3 or 4 questions. And so I looked into this guy and got his audiobook, and basically he keeps things really simple. He's all about, managing your money, getting out of debt. And usually in that kind of niche, you have all these guys who just have these crazy systems, right? Or they say, get a giant loan to replace your mortgage and do this, kind of shady stuff. Or they'll say, set up all these automatic payments or have this complex budget. And his thing pretty much, I'm not going to, do a book review or anything like that. But his thing pretty much is, save $1,000 and then attack and look at all your credit cards and like attack the smallest one first, and then use the money that you used to attack that small credit card with the next smallest credit card. So you're just knocking out and closing all these credit cards to the point where you're out of debt, you're debt free. And so once you have that, then you create a budget and you save up like 4 months of income, and then you get to the point where you put 15% of your money or your income into these certain mutual funds he suggests, and then you get to the point where everything left over in your budget, you just throw at your freaking mortgage. And I mean, and I realized that, I've been kind of doing a lot of things like this recently or just my whole life basically, where if I were to buy a car, I go and just buy it outright in cash. When I got the house I live in now, I could have got a double or triple size of the house, but I wanted to live below my means so that I could put more into the mortgage every single month, which I do and I have, so it gets paid off, years or decades before it's supposed to get paid off. And so, the point of all this is that you need to have your own ideology and your own, and even if it's really simple, I mean, you heard me literally just lay out most of his plan, and there's a couple other things about like saving for retirement, saving for your kids' college fund, but literally you could take Dave Ramsey's whole system that he takes a book to explain. You should buy the book, by the way, but you could pull it down on like 8 bullet points. And so it all makes sense, and it's all simple, and people keep calling into his radio show, and it's almost like he keeps having to repeat parts of his book basically. But I mean, the thing about a call-in show is everyone thinks they're different until you categorize and say, no, actually I'm going to point to page number 40, this is you exactly. And so along those lines, you can set your own rules, you can do your own thing, you can create your own information empire, and what I want you to do is do 4 daily tasks every day, 3 45-minute tasks, and 1 15-minute task, and just keep up that pace. So the next thing I want to get to, before we talk about the decline of social proof, is that you need to rise above being a geek. This is something that I thought of when I was doing one of my latest, free pitch webinars. It's basically that I used to really geek out about all these things like object-oriented programming and about this thing called polymorphism and the stuff, what's the term? It's basically where like you hide information inside of images and things like that. And I mean, that's all good. That's all good for a little hobby and things like that. But I realized pretty quickly that if I was going to geek out and if I was going to sell, for example, these products, some of them still sell a little bit, products on how to be a computer programmer. That's an okay niche, I guess. That's an okay area to be in, except for I realized that I was selling to broke people. I realized that I would go to some of these message boards and I would see people looking for programming help, and it was like one step above people asking for help with their homework. And I mean, you think about some of these niches, and I mentioned these before, there are niches you could get into, possibly, like teaching someone how to become a computer programmer. Yeah, you could teach someone how to get better grades, only you're going to be selling to broke people, and it's not going to be very exciting. Yeah, you could sell people on how to, how to clip coupons, or you could be Dave Ramsey and get all kinds of people and get people who want to retire earlier or pay off their home or own like 5 homes. And so what I realized quickly was I needed to do this thing called selling the sizzle, not the steak. Right? And you need to sell what you can do with something as opposed to what it is. I mean, if you just said get a budget, I mean, that's like half of Dave Ramsey stuff right there. But instead, he has his own system, and the more that he explains it, the more you start thinking about it. I mean, for example, when I first bought my home, they give you like the schedule of payments, right? And if I'd stuck to the payments that were given to me at that time, it was like a 30-year mortgage at 6.25%. I've refinanced since then and things like that. But at the time, it was going to be almost triple the cost to pay off my home. And so when you actually run the numbers, it's like, well, if you paid that off early, and then had, if every month you didn't have a dang house payment, and every month you could put $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 cash into a mutual fund, which is like, the money left over after your expenses, what would that freaking grow to after X amount of time? Or even things like renting a car or leasing a car, it's like, well, if you just looked at what that car payment would have been, and instead you put that in savings and waited 2 years, you could save up X number of dollars and just buy a car outright. I mean, he has a saying, Dave Ramsey has a saying that's like, if you live like no one else, then later you can live like no one else. Think about that for a second, right? So I mean, when we're marketing online, we need to focus on this stuff called benefits and not on features. It's good to, explain the features, but the focus needs to be on what those benefits are, because, no one cares about how hard you worked on something if I have a course on Facebook traffic. We have one called setupafanpage.com. If we have a course on membership sites, we have one at membershipcube.com. If I explain to you, this is the result of 800 hours of testing and tweaking membership sites, it's like, well, I guess that's a little impressive, but I don't have 800 hours to hear all the things that you've learned that you want to teach me. But then if I say, well, imagine if you had an idea for a product to sell, and then in the next 40 minutes you could click, and then boom, now you're ready to take orders. That's pretty dang amazing. As opposed to, well, if you install this FTP client and then download this WordPress installation zip file, and then you click the unzip button, and then you drag the files, and then you go to your control panel, and then you set up your database. It's like, okay, you lost me about 2 hours ago. So no one cares how hard you worked on something. The features are okay, but what's more important is the benefits. What can I do with this thing that I got? And then, when we're also talking about these different things we're doing online, is we want to think about objections, and we want to think about showmanship. All right. So objections are reasons that people necessarily wouldn't buy from you. So if I have my Membership Cube course, well, let's think about why someone might skip on my Membership Cube course. There might be reasons like price. Might be reasons like they think it's over their head or too complicated. They might think that they don't believe me, and they might think, well, you say this and that, and I see that you tell me I can do these things, but I don't believe that that's possible, or I believe that you can do it, but I don't believe that I can do it. Or they say, well, maybe you missed a piece, or maybe I might buy this course and get stuck somewhere. I might get stuck about the content piece of this or the marketing piece of this. So if we think about, if we beat people to their own objections, and we say, I know that you're worried about not being able to create content, but that's why we have this module where we can literally take anything, run it through this checklist, and then you have this done in just a few minutes instead of years like it was taking you before. If you think the price is so much, well, think about what it's costing you not to have it. Or what if you were to try to piece together or scrimp and save and add up all these other things and try to piece it all together? It'd be triple the price and you still wouldn't have a complete system. So we do that, and the other part of that is the showmanship, where it's really fun to show a huge result. Or it's really fun to show a countdown timer and say, well, try to guess how long it would take you to set up something like this. Is look at all this cool stuff. Look at these websites. Look at all these things I've created. How long do you think this took you? This took me 6 months, a month, a day, and I whip out the countdown timer, set it to 3 minutes, click the button, seconds are ticking away, and I go click, 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 done. Did it right in front of you. There's no way you can fight me on that. And even, you can use this for any example. Like I have a friend who is developing some kind of a URL redirector, a link tracker, right? So you say, I'm going to promote this affiliate program. It's got this big long link, but I can use this piece of software, this WordPress plugin, and make it a short link and track my visits and all that cool stuff. But what if he fired up one of those traffic, even like a junk traffic kind of site, right? So if you bought an ad on the call, or even just before the call, on Facebook, or even on something like AdFly, which sends real human traffic, but it's non-buying traffic, if he said, okay, look, we're going to see real time how all these things happen. And so he could go and buy 100,000 clicks on a site called AdFly, bring up his URL redirector, and just keep refreshing and showing all the numbers jumping and the graphs growing and things like that, and just seeing this freaking thing come alive. When we market our Facebook training course, which is once again setupafanpage.com, Lance will go to his fan page of I think 135,000 fans, give or take, make a post, and then just watch as the likes and the clicks and the shares and the comments all just pile up in a matter of minutes. Way cooler to show the result of that than it is to say, ooh, well, we can create a lookalike audience, and we can do our market research, and we can mess around with HTML5 iframes and FBML. No one cares about that. Maybe a couple of geeks, but they're the ones without money. What you want to market to are the people with money, which are people like business owners or enthusiasts in your niche. So we're talking about objections, and we're talking about showmanship and this timer. So I just wanted to get those two quick thoughts out of the way, because I'm sure they'll relate to today's call somehow. Quick thought number one is you can set your own rules, all right? You're above average. You might not be an internet marketer per se, but you market on the internet. And so you can set your own rules, set your own price, create your own offer. And I mean, if it doesn't play out, if you make this offer, you think it's great, something was wrong, it's not always the price, but if something just wasn't quite right, maybe the price was too low even, maybe the niche was wrong, maybe the offer was a little bit off, but then you can try again, and I mean, you can just be one of these people that stands out, even though if you're simpler, like your Dave Ramsey, or even if you're way, way a contrarian like your Dan Kennedy, as long as you try different experiments, some of those experiments pay off, and then that's something you can live off of or grow your business off of, and who cares what anyone else tells you, what anyone else thinks, what anyone else says to discourage you, just because they themselves are jealous. So let's get to our feature presentation, The Decline of Social Proof. And I'm going to be trying to be careful about what I say here. And I don't know what year you're listening to this podcast, if you're listening in 2015 or 2024 or whatever. But, you know, I didn't get a blog of my own until about 2008. And I remember not getting a blog because in 2005 I thought, man, I waited too long. I missed the peak. And so, I mean, whatever year you're listening to this, you do need a blog. And the thing is, in 2008, 2009, I had a lot of fun with this thing called blog comments. And the original reason why I didn't create a blog was that I didn't have this Dan Kennedy or this Dave Ramsey mindset just yet. And I thought, man, I care about what people think. I've got to post whatever I've got to post on this high traffic forum or later on Facebook because I need people to see what I'm writing. I don't want to just write to nobody. The problem, though, with saying what you have to say, first of all, let's touch forums, all right? You post what you have to say on a forum. The thing about a lot of these free communities is that there's you, and you're outnumbered by a lot of loud, clueless people. Not all places, not all people, but you're going to have one thing to say, and then 20 people who don't even know what they're talking about contradict you. So that's one part of it. The other part is that you post something, and then if I try to find what you just posted a year later, or a month or a week later, where is it? Can't find it. It's definitely not on the front page, definitely not on page 50. It's gone, it's buried. And on Facebook, it's even worse. On Facebook, you post some stuff. People might not even see it. People might not even click on it. On Facebook, at least in 2014 and 2015, you can't post a bunch of text. If you post like a video or a picture, you maybe get some likes. Probably don't get any comments. If you get a comment, maybe you get a sentence or two. But early on with this blogging thing, I was trying different experiments, and I had this thing called the 10-comment rule. I've mentioned it before in this podcast, where I would post a blog post, and I would say, I'm only going to continue posting if I get 10 people to leave a comment below. And if I get 8 comments, well then this was my last post. And I would, do these crazy things like email my list. Imagine that. I would do even more crazy things like email my list a second or third time. Whoa, that's some advanced stuff right there. But anyway, I would make these posts on my blog, and sometimes I'd only get 5 comments early on. But you know what? If I got 5 comments, I could just go and reply individually to each of the comments and get my 10 comments. I've done this with, 25, 50, 100 comments, but I realized around maybe 2011, 2012 or so, when Facebook really took, when Facebook really took over, people would rather stay on Facebook, first of all. People would rather browse Facebook as opposed to some random guy's blog. I noticed that some people would just take to just posting on Facebook and posting really short things. And even I found myself not commenting on anyone's blog anymore. And if I saw something, I'd share it or I'd comment or I'd like it, but I really wouldn't comment on it. And so we noticed this sharp decline with Facebook. Whereas before I could send out an email and easily get 50 or 100 comments on a post. And I would do fun things like, use a plugin called calltoactionplugin.com and install it on my WordPress blog so that if I put out a blog post and if I got, 5 comments, 10 comments, that'd be great. But if it hit 50 comments, then it would shut off. And now nobody could comment on the post. And if it was at 45 comments, it would say, danger, danger. Only 5 spots left for comments. So we can have a lot of fun with that. But even with that, after 2012 and certainly after 2013, it became like freaking pulling teeth to get someone to comment on a blog post. 2014, man, forget about it. And so the same people, and I even noticed it wasn't just me. I noticed that the clicks from when I sent emails are just about the same, my content didn't get any worse. So the same subscribers, more or less, the same amount of clicks, but as soon as they landed on that page, they just click off very quickly, and they wouldn't leave a comment. And I noticed I wasn't commenting. And so some of these people even that I followed, and they used to get 200 comments. So they used to do a product launch and get 2,000 comments. They'd struggle to get 2 or 3. Kind of a scary place. And I noticed, at least with my blog, that I would get just tons of comment spam and maybe, only a handful of comments. And even if I, every weekend just hit people with some of these old blog posts, it was tough to get comments. If I would hit someone, but with a podcast, it was even tougher. And I think that was just because the prerequisite for leaving a comment was you have to go and click and listen to a 20-minute or a 40-minute audio program. So, I did this thing, and let me share with you a strategy called, let's just call it strategic reverse comments. It's the best thing I can think of. SRC. So let's say that you're going to be doing a podcast on membership sites, right? Now, the best way to get comments at the end of a blog post is to do what's called a call to action. Tell them what to do. In copywriting, it's pretty basic. You have something to say, and if you just ended it, okay, that's a cute little article. But if you end it, say, with a question, and if you say, what was your favorite tactic I just shared with you about membership sites? Or you say, what's your favorite membership platform? Or you say, where is your membership site? What's your URL? That hugely increases the number of blog comments you're going to get on any kind of blog post. And by the way, I'm mentioning all this stuff about membership sites. The best training course to get on membership sites is at membershipcube.com. That's membershipcube.com, membershipcube.com. And so anyway, what I would do, this thing called reverse comments, is I would know what I was going to say, and a lot of times I would type out what I was going to say in a Word document or a Google Drive document and not post it right away. But I would post this thing about membership sites, and I knew how it was going to end, right? I'd write 500 words, 1,000 words, and end with a question about maybe, where's your membership site, okay? So I'd have, maybe 5 things to say about membership sites and end that post with, what is your membership site? Well, what I would do is I would start with just that question. So here's what I would do. I would go and make a post in my blog at robertplank.com and make a new post, name it the same exact title I was going to name it, and then post just the end. Post just the question part. And I would email my list, and I would say, hey, I made a blog post asking where your membership site is set up, and if it's not set up, what's it going to be about? Leave a comment. So now we've changed the game from you having to read a long blog post or listen to a long podcast into just here's 2 sentences. So now we're pandering a little bit more to the Facebook generation, or maybe Facebook's just trained you in a certain way, so that now you don't have to read or think or do a lot. You just see this quick question and you leave a blog post. So here's the thing about that, is that, well, it's a lot easier to get 10 comments on a blog post that doing it like that. And I noticed from the days of the 10 comment rule, I would get about 0.5% people commenting. All right? And that's even with repeat email. So 0.5%. That means 1 out of every 200 visitors would comment. So you want 10 comments, you'd have to send 2,000 clicks to your blog. It's a lot of clicks. But if you could only eke out 1,000 clicks over, a couple of weekends or a couple of days, then that's fine. You get your 5 comments, you reply to each one individually. And when I would do this reverse comment technique, sometimes I would get 5 to 10% of people clicking over who would go and then leave a comment. So then, hey, if you only can send 500 clicks from your email list, or combine it with, paid ads and Facebook and stuff like that, if you can only send 500 clicks, then you might be able to get 10 or 20 comments just from that. So now, by the way, the whole reason we do this is just for this thing called social proof, right? Because if you go to someone's website, and it doesn't, I mean, if they're a big, internet marketer and they say I make millions of dollars a year, or they say I can get all this traffic, and you go and look at their blog and you say, zero comments, zero comments, zero comments, one comment. Well, I guess their comments do work, but no one really cares about the site. Why should I care? I mean, I've seen people doing stuff like they'll move their comments to Facebook and things like that. And the whole idea with that is, well, if someone leaves me a blog comment, it'll also post that to their wall. From what I've seen, it doesn't really help that much. And so the only thing that really does help is this thing called strategic reverse comments, where you start with the question, you post just that, you get your 10 comments. And so then what? All right, you get your 10 comments. And then you can go in and reply to each of the comments, and hopefully people didn't just say, "Hey, nice site," or "Hey, me too." But if you asked the question, they honestly answered it, and it kind of gets the conversation going, you can think of something else to add to that. The way you do is you leave a comment responding to that one person, and getting a little technical, you edit the timestamp of your comment to appear just after their comment, right? So if you say, "Here's this post about membership sites," and then the post only says, what's your website, or where's it going to be, or what's going to be about, and you have 10 people telling you about their membership site. Well, what you can do is just honestly click over to each one. It'll only take a second. Just open each one in a new tab and just ask them a question about it. If it's incomplete, you say, well, it looks good, but when's it coming out? If it's about something interesting, like if we said like how to become debt free, if that was their membership site, it's like, well, great. When did you yourself become debt-free? If it's a site about weight loss, you say, well, great, how many members do you have? So, you don't have to write them a whole novel back, but just respond to each of these blog comments. And now, if you just do that, you'll see your blog post and those first 10 replies, and then your 10 replies under that. So what you have to do is look at the time that each person commented. Getting a little technical, but I hope it's okay. If someone posted a comment on June 1st at 11:15 a.m., then you can go into your WordPress dashboard backend, whatever you want to call it, and edit your comment. So if they posted on June 1st, 11:15 a.m., you make your reply to them on June 1st, 11:16 a.m., just so that you can move your blog post up and sandwich your replies in between theirs. And maybe you have a blog where it gives you what's called nested comments, where you can reply and like indent your response. That might work too. But the whole point of this is that you had this big long thing to say, and you posted just the question at the end, and you got your 10 responses. And then you go in and you respond to each of those 10. So now we're getting somewhere. Now, even without even trying, we have 20 comments under our blog post. And then what you do is you just click on the edit button on your blog post. You don't delete it. You don't make a new blog post. You just edit what you already have on that site, and you just dump in the rest of the thing you just wrote. And so now what does it look like? When someone comes to your site, they say, whoa, this person wrote, 3-4 pages about this, and they got 20 people to actually read the whole thing and respond to it. And so then what you have is you have this blog post, 20 comments, and then maybe email again about it, so that now someone can maybe skim it really quick, or someone can read the whole thing and reply based on that whole thing. And maybe they argue with you, or maybe even some of these people who already commented with their URL can now reply about the actual content of your blog post. And maybe you have to, email once or twice, or put it in your autoresponder as what's called a scheduled broadcast, so that maybe in a week or two it hits them up again. Maybe you hit them up, post on Facebook a few more times. And it might take you a handful of tries, but I think, and I believe in you, that you can eke out 5 more comments. Okay, so just to recap here, you got 10 comments initially just from asking a question. You replied to those, so you got 20 comments. And let's say you get just 5 more. So now you're at 25 comments. And even if that's all you get, if you suck, then you can reply to each of those 5 and get yourself to 30 comments. And if you have 30 comments for every post on your blog, then that's pretty good social proof. Everyone's worried about this thing called social proof. They say, if I'm selling a product, I have a sales letter, I've got to have all these testimonials. If I post on Facebook, I've got to have it at least say 1 comment, even if that means I reply to my own post, or I like my own post. That way it at least looks good. At least it doesn't look like a freaking ghost town. So you might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with geeking out? And what does this have to do with setting your own rules? Well, you know what? I mean, as the participation went down and down, I mean, it still is pretty good. And I mean, I still, if you're one of the people who commented on my blog on RarioPlank.com, I mean, you're a fantastic person. That's actually most of you. I'm pulling up my blog right now to see what the exact numbers are. We're looking at 249 posts with 12,718 comments. Oh, actually, hang on a second. Let me clear my spam. All right, now we have some clean numbers. 249 posts and just under 8,000 comments. 7,911 comments. So what does that come out to? That comes out to... So on average, I have 31.7 comments. Oh, 31.8 comments. It's already on there. In my blog posts. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, people stopped commenting. How dare you? But I realized that I was expending a lot of energy trying to get people to comment. I kept having email over and over again, and I just realized, you know what? Let's make blog commenting, at least on my blog, special again. So, on different blog posts, I'm not necessarily going to let you comment. Why? Because I said so. And I mean, the thing too about, if you look at this from a copywriting point of view, I've noticed that recently I've been using more and more blog posts as more of a pre-launch sequence. So that means that if we have a product coming out about selling on Amazon FBA, which is a way for you to take items that you buy from stores and send them into Amazon and make money off them, get a profit from them, and that course is at dropshipceo.com. It makes a lot more sense for me to make a blog post about Amazon FBA and explain, and maybe even just re-explain what's in the sales letter, re-explain what's in the webinar pitch, and I might write it out or make it a podcast and get it transcribed. But either way, I'll make a blog post about Amazon FBA. And instead of having the call to action at the end be leave a comment, I'll disable comments and make in giant text to be a link to the dang sales letter. And we make tons of sales that way. It's just one of those things where, I mean, you might have heard the cliche about you need to have 7 points of contact before you make a sale, all that good stuff. So why not do a pitch webinar, or why not send some emails about a pitch webinar, do the pitch webinar, more emails about going to the sales letter, maybe another email where you send them a report, which might just be a transcript of the pitch webinar, and then maybe do a quick podcast about Amazon, and maybe put that on your blog, and then make it so they can go from your blog and click on that. And I mean, there's no rule saying that you have to have comments on every single blog post. And it's just so recently, I mean, with this whole decline of social proof, I mean, you don't have to have social proof. All right, you just have to have dang proof in general. And so that means, if you're one of those people who's like really obsessed with, I've got to have, all these comments on my blog posts, or what, the other thing too is sometimes I don't want to have to wait. Sometimes I want to make a couple of blog posts over the course of a couple of days, and there just isn't time for me to email my list and wait for some comments, and email the next day and wait for some more comments. And so, I mean, I hope it doesn't sound too nasty, but what I've just been doing, and maybe you should do too, is disable blog comments and only open up those comments every once in a while when you make it a special thing. And now it's like, well, geez, this person normally doesn't allow me to comment on my blog, and now they can. You know what, too, at the end of the day, if anyone gets on your case about, blog comments, or, oh, you deleted my blog comment, or you don't allow blog comments, or how dare you have an opinion on this and that, you know what? You can set your own rules. I keep thinking years and years ago back to when I would just kind of get bored and I would experiment. And, that's why I made my blog, and that's why I did the comment limiting, and that's why I've been closing comments, because I'm experimenting, and because I can. There's real power in because I can. So back in the day, I would just make these packages, and I would do things like make the price increase every time somebody bought into my knowledge. I'm the first one that did that. I would do things like say X number of copies after those are sold. After 80 copies, we're just going to close the whole offer. Or after 50 copies, then we're going to increase the price. Do all these crazy things. People were pissed off at me. And they were saying things like, well, how dare you? Why would you limit the number of copies of your course to 100 sales only? And I would try different responses. I would say, oh, well, you know what? There's my bandwidth costs. Or I would say, you know what? I just don't want this information getting out to too many people. Or I don't want to have too much customer support. And I mean, I got flack every time I had one of those excuses. But then when I said, it's this because I can, it's this price because I can, it's limited to this number of copies because I can, well then what can anyone say to you? They are always free to not buy. They're always free to go to a competitor. We all have competitors, but there's something to that. There's something to, the next time that if you come across maybe somewhat of a controversial figure, maybe not just a marketer, but just even like a celebrity or like a politician or like a commentator or something like that. It's like there's something to that. There's something to being maybe a little bit controversial, not just for the sake of being controversial, but if that's who you really are and being honest and genuine, and then eliminating the people who don't like you, who are never going to like you anyway, and then because you're different, because you stand out, you attract that new group of people. All right, so there's something in because I can, and you don't have to have. I know that you might be tempted to compare yourself to some of these guys who every Facebook post they make gets 200 likes and 500 comments. Wonder how many of those are actual real likes and comments, right? Or if every blog post they make gets 100 comments. Well, I wonder how much they paid in advertising to get those comments. I wonder if they paid, virtual assistants to post fake comments. Don't know, don't care. But there's something to, you can always have negative social proof, right? If you have a sales letter and it's dated 5 years ago, well, now that's automatically working against you. If you have a blog and you only have 0 comments everywhere, or maybe only 1 or 2, it's kind of working against you. But if you close those blog comments, no one has to know how many people went to your blog posts, or if you would have got 100 comments if you opened up comments. So now it kind of takes that out of the equation. They don't discount you and your information before even getting to you. So social proof, don't worry about it so much. Facebook, yeah, they are kind of taking over. Blog comments are tougher than they used to be, and so you have one of 2 choices. You can either close down your blog comments, which is what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable future. I'll open up comments every now and then, and heck, depending on if you're listening to this in the year 2031, maybe I've opened up comments forever. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen by then? But the other thing you can do, either close down blog comments or open them up, but be a little more strategic about it. All right? Every single blog post you have, your email subscribers should know about it several times over. So that means if you have a blog, and even if you have a couple of posts, and even if they're just YouTube videos or articles from someone else, or maybe you had some articles outsourced, email your list about every single one. Put it in a follow-up sequence. So if someone new comes to your site, and imagine that, someone comes to your blog, signs up in a form on your blog sidebar, wouldn't they want to know about your other blog posts? And it's really not as annoying as you think to send out more than one email about the same offer, about the same sales letter, about the same blog post. And it's just one of those things where you can remove the dates on your blog post and stuff like that in order to get people to comment on things that maybe are 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years old, but are still relevant. So 2 choices. Close comments down or be strategic about it using that 10, 20, 30 thing. Now remember we said to write your blog post or even record it, get it transcribed or find a video or whatever, but it ends with a call to action, which is a question. You post just that. Email to it, send traffic any way you can, get your first 10 comments, reply to those to get 20 comments, post the whole entire rest of the thing, and do whatever it takes to eke out the remaining comments to get up to 30 comments for every blog post. And so, I think that if you do maybe a mix of that, maybe leave most blog posts closed, open a few to get a ton of comments, because people don't know when the next time is they'll be able to comment. I think that'll work great for you, and I think that's how you can remove social proof from a lot of your marketing and just do what it is and do whatever you do because you can, and set your own rules and have a lot of fun doing it. Because what's the point in your business and internet marketing if you're not having fun and you're not making money? So get out there, make your money, do your 40-day tasks. You don't always have to have blog comments. And visit us at membershipcube.com. And real quick, one last thing I want to throw in there about membership sites, because, social proof doesn't end with just your blog and your sales letter. When someone comes in your membership site, if you have blog comments open and there's 0 comments, if I join your course, maybe that means no one else has bought. But the best alternative at the moment is a plugin that's inside of our Membership Cube course called WP Notepad. What's really cool about this plugin is that it allows you to create fill-in-the-blank forms or checklists so that you can teach something, and instead of having someone maybe post their proof or post what they're going to do, maybe just have them check the box. Because in today's culture, in today's Facebook-like society, maybe you'll get more response from people checking a box than from leaving blog comments, and now they can see their own notes, they can see their own checkbox, their own checklist, and their own progress. It doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing in this site. For all they know, you have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 members, but now they can just check off their progress. So check out that, literally, check out that plugin called WP Notepad, which is inside our membershipcube.com course. I'm late for the gym, gotta get out of here, but while I'm heading out there, go to membershipcube, that's membershipcube.com, and beat social proof to a pulp. Set up your membership site, set your own rules inside that site, and I look forward to hearing where you have your membership site set up by you emailing me personally at robert@robertplank.com. This has been the Robert Plank Show, the decline of social proof. Join us inside of membershipcube.com and set up your membership site today.